When you think of war, you probably picture soldiers, strategy, and perhaps a few tanks or fighter jets. What you likely don't imagine is a full-scale military operation launched against a mob of large, flightless birds. But in 1932, Australia made global headlines, not for conquering new lands or defending its borders, but for waging war against the emu and losing. Yes, this actually happened. A war unlike any other. The Great Emu War was not just an odd footnote in history. It was a uniquely absurd episode that has since become legend. Despite sounding like a pub yarn gone too far, this event is very real, complete with official military involvement, government debates, and some very flustered farmers. The scene: Campion District, Western Australia. The enemy: emus, over 20,000 of them. The emu invasion. Each year, Australia's native emus migrate from the coast to inland regions during breeding season. In 1932, their seasonal trek brought them right into the heart of recently cultivated farmland in Campion. To the emus, the wheat fields were a goldmine of easy meals and cozy nesting spots. But for the local farmers, the birds were nothing short of an ecological nightmare. The emus trampled crops, damaged precious fencing, which inadvertently allowed rabbits to slip in and cause further destruction, and triggered a crisis for settlers already struggling with poor soil conditions and falling wheat prices. The cherry on top: these struggling farmers, many of whom were veterans promised land for their wartime service, weren't receiving the government subsidies they'd been promised. Faced with devastation and desperate for help, the farmers turned to the one institution they believed could save them: the Australian military. Military might meets bird brains. Enter Sir George Pearce, then Australia's Minister of Defence and himself a military veteran. After lobbying by the ex-soldiers turned farmers, Pearce approved a rather unusual deployment. Soldiers armed with machine guns would be sent to Campion to deal with the emu menace. Yes, machine guns, for birds. Under the command of Major G.P.W. Meredith of the Royal Australian Artillery, the army rolled into Western Australia with 2 Lewis guns, a type of early light machine gun, and 10,000 rounds of ammunition. What could possibly go wrong? Opening salvo. On November 2, the soldiers prepared for their first encounter. A small group of about 50 emus was spotted, but they were beyond effective range. Locals tried herding the birds into a trap, but emus are fast, very fast. Rather than crowding together into a tight firing line, like in a war film, the emus scattered in every direction, breaking into small groups and making themselves difficult targets. Only a handful of birds were killed that day. It was an underwhelming start. An emu counteroffensive. Undeterred, the troops tried again on November 4 near a local dam. This time, they had better odds. A large group of more than 1,000 emus was spotted heading toward the trap. With the birds at close range, the soldiers opened fire. Victory seemed imminent until the gun jammed. Before the jam could be cleared, only 12 emus had been killed, and the rest scattered across the plains, once again making themselves elusive. It was becoming abundantly clear that emus weren't just large flightless birds. They were mobile, organized, and freakishly difficult to shoot. Tactics, ammo, and a whole lot of frustration. In the days that followed, Major Meredith and his team shifted south, hoping to find more docile flocks. By November 8, they fired over 2,500 rounds. Yet, the number of confirmed emu deaths was embarrassingly low. Reports vary widely, with estimates ranging from as few as 50 to as many as 500. Whichever figure you believe, it was clear the mission was not going well. The birds had a knack for guerrilla tactics. As ornithologist Dominic Cervanti famously put it, the emu command had evidently ordered guerrilla tactics, and its unwieldy army soon split up into innumerable small units that made use of the military equipment uneconomic. To put it simply, the the emus were winning. Public reaction and official withdrawal. It did not take long for word of the operation to reach the Australian press. Headlines ridiculed the effort, with many papers mocking the idea of soldiers with machine guns losing to birds. By November 8, the same day Meredith had already spent 2,500 rounds, the Australian House of Representatives debated the entire affair. The public outcry and sheer embarrassment was too much. The military was pulled from the region. The emus had effectively won. Major Meredith, in his final report, compared the emus to Zulu warriors, noting their toughness even after taking hits. He observed, "If we had a military division with the bullet-carrying capacity of these birds, it would face any army in the world. They can face machine guns with the invulnerability of tanks. You've got to admire his honesty." The sequel. Oddly enough, this wasn't the end of the Emu War. Later that same year, another round of military assistance was quietly approved. This time, the operation was more successful. By some accounts, 986 birds were killed, and up to 2,500 died later from their injuries. Still, the damage had been done not just to the emus, but to the military's reputation. Conservationists were appalled. The media continued to mock the operation, and further requests for military intervention were flatly denied in the years that followed. The irony of it all. What makes the entire episode even more bizarre is that the emu is one of Australia's national symbols. It stands proudly on the country's coat of arms alongside the kangaroo. The irony of launching a military campaign against one's own national animal is, frankly, staggering. But perhaps it's not that surprising when you consider Australia's complicated relationship with its wildlife. After all, kangaroo meat is a staple in some parts of the country. Maybe national symbols are more flexible down under. Lessons from the war? Yes, there were some. The Great Emu War wasn't just a farcical episode, it was also a cautionary tale. Here are a few key takeaways from this unique historical hiccup. Nature does not always bend to human will. Despite having superior firepower, the soldiers were no match for the emus' speed, agility, and unpredictable behavior. Technology isn't always the answer. Deploying machine guns to control wildlife turned out to be inefficient and publicly humiliating. Public relations matter. The media coverage and public ridicule that followed the campaign arguably did more damage than the birds themselves. Sometimes, less is more. In the long run, better land management and fencing solutions likely proved more effective than military intervention. Modern perspective. Looking back nearly a century later, the Great Emu War is remembered as one of the most comical and strangely poetic military operations in modern history. It's the story of a government that tried to solve a pest problem with brute force and wound up on the losing side of an asymmetric war. To this day, the phrase "the Great Emu War" triggers laughter and disbelief. It's taught in schools, referenced in pop culture, and has even inspired memes, comedy skits, and satirical documentaries. Some Australians take a certain pride in the story, not because it was a success, but because it so perfectly captures the absurdity, resilience, and stubbornness that seem to define both the emus and their human counterparts. A final word from the battlefield. Major Meredith may not have left Western Australia with a victory, but he did leave with a story. His report's legendary quote stands as the perfect summation of the event. "The emus won because they kept coming, and we just could not shoot fast enough." So the next time you think your job is hard, spare a thought for the Australian soldiers who spent days chasing giant birds across the outback, only to be outwitted, outmaneuvered, and ultimately defeated by creatures with brains the size of walnuts. It's just another chapter in the wild, wonderful, and sometimes downright wacky book of Australian history. And that's the story of the Great Emu War, where machine guns met feathers and lost. If you enjoyed this wild tale from Aussie history, Don't forget to smash that like and subscribe. Got a favorite strange historical event, or want us to cover another ridiculous military blunder? Drop it in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks for watching, legends, and remember, never underestimate an emu.